Immigration has been political fodder for decades. Unfortunately, political posturing and both overt and covert agendas have created a situation which is out of control. I'm Chris Cordani, Media Director from Project Sentinel. And with me is a roundtable from our group, Project Sentinel, to break down, unravel, and offer solutions to the border crisis and subsequent immigration influx. We have our president, Lieutenant Colonel retired Tony Shaffer, our chairman, Navy Captain retired Pete O'Brien, and distinguished fellows, Lieutenant Colonel British Army retired Tim Wilson, and Jay Homnick. Follow us on X, Project Sentinel. That's PRJ_Sentinel. That's on X. We're also on Facebook, LinkedIn, and other social media. And if you're watching on one of our video or listening to us on one of our audio podcast outlets, please hit that subscribe button. You can also find us on our website, projectsentinel.com. Gentlemen, after Title 42 was lifted, the floodgates were opened and all heck broke loose, proverbially. I have to get those words right. I don't believe for a moment the Biden administration, though, didn't know that the mass influx wasn't going to happen. Yet, they still weren't ready for it to get this far out of control. They could have put the cork back earlier or eased the process. They refused. That's on the surface, but there's more to this. Tony, let's start with you.
Well, I think it's out of control because certain governors decided to make it a policy issue to move the influx into the interior. That is to say that the buses of people showing up at Kamala Harris's residence in D.C., Muriel Bowser having to deal with it, New York dealing with it, Philadelphia, all the major blue metropolitan areas are sharing the pain. And what I find ironic is all these places were quote unquote sanctuary cities. So it's kind of like you ask for it, we're giving it to you. What's wrong with that? And the actual application of the theory to the reality has not been pleasant. And I think that this is an issue that most reasoned Americans understand now is not a good idea. And one of the trivial points, I want to throw this out for the group. There is one president, and I think I told one of you who it was, but don't jump up if I already told you. There was one president who had to deal with this back if I say the year, it'll give it away. But there's one president who had to deal with a mass influx of immigrants and who did actually have a massive deporting program. Does anybody know who that was? Eisenhower, that's right. Dwight D. Eisenhower and a project, and I'm just going to say it because it's true, Operation Wetback. Man. So anywho, this was an issue that Eisenhower dealt with. And oh, by the way, he seemed to do a pretty good job because it didn't come back again until the late 60s, early 70s, where Nixon kind of dealt with it a little bit. And Reagan dealt with it very badly by actually believing the left when they promised, if you grant amnesty to just this once, grant amnesty, we'll secure the border. Well, they never secured the border, and they turned California permanently blue. So I think this time I'd like to believe the nation will be smarter, although Biden won't, because this is what they want. And I do know, based on conversations I've had with those who are doing studies for the presumptive Trump 47 administration, that this is going to be something that will be high on the agenda. And yes, mass deportations is on the agenda, which I still believe is the correct answer. The Democrats have allowed the asylum law, people seeking asylum, to basically understand exactly what words to use, what to say, so they can get here permanently to wait for a court date that they'll never show up for. They become permanent citizens de facto. And it's not acceptable. My family came here in, I think it was 1910, my Hernandez, the Spanish side of the family. And they came over on the Lusitania before it sunk, obviously, just saying. And they moved to a little town called Cherryvale, Kansas. Cherryvale, Kansas was literally the southeast corner of Kansas, and worked in a copper smelter. It was hard, unforgiving work, but they came here legally. They established a home, and now here, they became good Americans who supported the basic principles, concepts, and policies and laws under our Constitution. And I think it's important to restore constitutional principles. That's the whole purpose of Project Sentinel, is trying to kind of get back to the basics. So I do support the concept of mass deportations, of restoring law, the intent of the law. And I'm sorry, there is no the border is not broken. The policies are not broken. The only thing that's broken is the enforcement, and the enforcement is broken because the Democrats under Joe Biden and Barack Obama want the crisis so they can actually create a solution, which was the proposed legislation to harden the concept of 5,000 illegals coming across the day so they can process them. It's not acceptable, and I think everybody should say no.
Can I jump in then and just put a few facts out there to put this into perspective as well?
Yeah.
And bear in mind, I would like to also add, I speak as a legal immigrant. I'm proud of being an American. I came here in 2004. It took me until 2011 to go through the legal system to become an American citizen. I met and fell in love with and married an American, and it still took 5 years after I married her to get here legally. What's going on at the moment is that, stepping back to Eisenhower, his crisis was 100,000 illegal crossings in a year. Today, that is a figure which is so below. I mean, in less than a year, it's gone up, so that in December last year, we were looking at 300,000 apprehensions. That's 3.3 million cases per year of apprehensions of people crossing the border illegally. 3.3 million. And just by the way on that 3.3 million is also, by coincidence, the number of cases pending for immigration court to actually over here. And I would point out, when Tony says that it's, if you like, the administration and under-resourcing and what have you, there are only 682 immigration judges available to do this stuff. That's 4,500 cases per judge per year. And you cannot do that. There is not enough time or will to do it. It needs a lot more immigration judges. And my personal feeling is very strongly, all these people that are applying for asylum, they need to be seen in a court within, say, 48 hours of being apprehended, before they're, well before they're released into the country.
So I'm going to tell you a prediction of what's going to happen next. Is that when they get desperate, especially if they think they might lose the election, they will create a setup where you don't have to see the judge. They'll bypass the judges and they'll suddenly start approving huge numbers. And it'll be too late. Any law that happens afterwards won't have the ability to undo the citizenships that they'll create on a quick basis.
It's almost like the idea is they make enough of a mess where people will say, throw our hands up, let's just let them in, forget it, and move things forward for the future. Whereas the damage was already done, nobody wants to bother to fix it.
If I can jump in, people always, we're a nation of immigrants, etc. I go back to everybody here, and particularly my two friends here who just gave their history of their immigration. The fact of the matter is we are a nation of legal immigrants, and that's an important distinction. We are a nation of laws, or we're supposed to be, and if you don't enforce the laws, well, it doesn't matter whether you have the laws or not. We have laws on the books. The laws work. The laws need to be enforced. And the idea that the answer that is dragged out every time someone brings up, we need to do something about immigration is, well, we need immigration reform. Well, no, we don't. We just need to enforce the law. And in fact, a good deal of enforcement of the law would be just simply to fix the border fence. There are border fences down there. If you've ever been to El Paso, there's some really spectacular fencing going through the southern edge of El Paso. No one's crossing there. They're crossing either to the west or to the east, where the fences have broken down. But the fact of the matter is, the fences work. No one crawls through razor wire. Here's a news flash. No one crawls through razor wire. You know, and are there tunnels underneath the border in certain places? Yeah, there are. Built by the cartels, and they're making fabulous amounts of money using those tunnels. And can we deal with the tunnels? Yeah, there is technology to find tunnels, and then you deal with them. But the fact of the matter is you start with a fence, and you start with the simple fact of we have to enforce the law. If you go to Ellis Island, everybody came to Ellis Island came to illegally, and 1% of the people who arrived at Ellis Island were sent home. It's a very simple idea here. Enforce the law.
Yep.
Well, that would be nice, wouldn't it?
Well, you know, today to work for a Mexican cartel digging tunnels, you have to bring a certificate from Hamas that you have experience.
There you go. To be clear, let's be clear here, as Joe Biden would say. Let's be clear here. Here's the deal. We're at an inflection point. Biden's pet border bill, authored by Senator Lankford of Oklahoma, does not, I repeat, does not solve the illegal immigrant problem, as is claimed to have done, or claimed to do if passed. It does little for future border crossings. The only thing this does is add to the bureaucracy in the DHS and bring in more people to process those who were already here. That's to your points before, gentlemen. It's not about deporting or moving them out. It's about just processing the people who are here and say, all right, now you're stuck with everybody. Do something about it. And let's just put it this way. The vetting from the DHS, or at least this DHS, is questionable at best.
Chris,
Yep.
why are you attacking bureaucrats with fat spreading butts sitting in chairs all across the nation? Do you understand that they are a protected class? I cannot believe you've attacked the very bureaucracy which gives us layers of incapability to actually do anything. And I shame on you, Chris. Shame on you, Chris, for really.
I must repent.
I mean, how is it you don't understand we need 80,000 judges to line up and process these people, so we have this unending stream? How is it you don't understand that the IRS is your friend and only there to help you make sure that you pay your fair share? You know, I can't believe you're so callous to understand the need to have the federal government fatten itself for purposes of trying to help us.
I'm a bad boy.
I'll just say that locally here in upstate backcountry New York, if people think that in DC are living this dream where if they can just make it bad enough, we'll all just cave and settle for having nothing happen, they're wrong. Even in my local small town of just over 5,000 people, they're complaining about the illegal immigrants there, who are being shipped, by the way, bussed out of New York in the dead of night, out of New York City to upstate New York. Can you imagine what a town of 5,000 does when 200 immigrants arrive?
Look what they're doing in parts of Britain. You're taking small towns and pushing immigrants that way. I'll say border crossers or sea crossers, if you will, and saying, all right, now you people have to take care of all of them. This is not only a population problem and a cultural problem. Now you're going to get to infrastructure problems and sewage issues. You're going to get to health issues. These small areas cannot take in an influx where in some areas of the world, or at least of parts of Britain, and yes, if they're bringing them to smaller towns here, are going to account for a very large relative percentage of the population. That the facilities or the tax base cannot handle.
Yep, that's exactly what's going on here, Chris. The tax base can't handle it, and neither can the housing stock. We're at the stage where local people can't find somewhere to rent to live.
And then you have the schools. See, here's the problem. A long time ago, we stopped bringing in illegal immigrants. People don't realize this happened. We stopped actually letting in any illegal immigrants. They were all replaced by undocumented peoples. And now they were kicked out of the country and all replaced by asylum seekers. That's the big one. They're now asylum seekers, even if they're not seeking asylum.
Well, we have some space in the asylums if that's what they're looking for.
But but there's a whole host of issues here that we're all touching on, that have a whole host of associated costs to the American citizen. If you overload the infrastructure, that needs to be fixed. That's a tax issue. If you bring in people and it doesn't take a large percentage, you bring in people who are a security risk, crime goes up. National security risks are also of issue here. So there are national security issues that bring in associated costs. Those are more tax issues. So there's each time you start trying to get your hands around this, what you realize is there is a consequence, and that consequence is a cost, and that cost is being passed on to the American taxpayer.
Pete, and if I may jump in there's another huge one, which is deportation costs.
Right.
Even
That's
if we
another
said
one.
no at the border, the Mexicans won't take them back. We end up busing them to airports and flying them places. Huge cost, thousands of dollars per person each and every time we deport somebody.
And this is another thing. A lot of these immigrants, or a lot of the illegal people, the ones that are sneaking through the border, are not Mexican citizens or not Mexicans.
Yep.
Nope, they're coming now. First off, couldn't they sneak through another way besides the Darien Gap? Some of these Chinese nationals are sneaking through the Darien Gap. I'm thinking that's a lot of backtracking there. Maybe they like to hike. I don't know what the deal is, but there are people from enemy nations sneaking in.
No, Chris, they're sending them through the Darien Gap because if they go through Canada, they're all going to become the Mackenzie brothers. I mean, they'll just stop. It's like, oh, Canada, this place is cool. Why do I want to go south? This is wonderful.
They got to find a mouse in the beer, eh?
Hey,
Then we get a free beer, eh?
nice toque. Nice toque there, eh? No offense to our former British members, just saying. Canadians are cool.
Hey,
they're almost as able as the British, and they tend to. Well, they are. They're nearly there, right? I mean,
Damning
close.
with faint praise.
Well, here's something. Canada gave us some great things like, hockey, as I said before, Canadian bacon, and men without hats. Still doesn't make up for Justin Trudeau.
Norm Macdonald makes up for everything.
Yeah. No. It's Bill Shatner. Bill Shatner's Canadian, and one Bill Shatner is worth a battalion of Chinese. Yeah.
Oh boy, we're going to get in trouble for this, aren't we? And Chinese communist, you're talking
I
about.
like Bill Shatner. We had the same publisher and everything.
He's my hero.
So.
Still, to this day. I mean, the guy is still going off, jumping out of airplanes,
I know.
flying into space.
I want to be him at 92. I do.
Yeah,
I really do.
He's going to be at the Chiller Theater. He's going to be at the Chiller Theater event in New Jersey later on in April. He's full of energy. Let's put it that way. The man's full of energy.
And he's got a sense of humor.
Yeah,
that's a huge thing.
He's willing to mock himself also.
Yep.
Yeah. I still love his Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds.
Yep.
That album transformed. The album Transform Man is better than people think. As a matter of fact, it's great spoken word. If people really give it a listen, the title track's good. His cover of Mr. Tambourine Man is absolutely fantastic. It's
actually
stellar
is.
spoken word. It's better than Leonard Nimoy's 5 albums Leonard Nimoy had.
Bilbo Baggins.
Ooh.
Oh my God! You guys don't know what I'm talking about. Google Bilbo Baggins and Leonard Nimoy.
Nimoy,
I used to have an album.
Please, it's a rare treat. But first, have half a bottle of scotch. It'll go over. Just saying.
I used to have a collection album called Golden Throats, and I believe there was a few in that series. I had one of them. It featured Leonard Nimoy singing "If I Had a Hammer."
I've heard that. Yeah.
Yep. I think Jack Webb was doing a song. He had Sebastian Cabot doing one. Which one did It Ain't Me, Babe? That might have been Cabot. I don't remember.
Well, for TV people, Vicki Lawrence is great.
Well,
but
let's
she's a
circle
great
this back.
singer.
Let's circle this back to where it needs to be.
That's correct.
Which is China. But is Yoko Ono China? Where did Yoko Ono? Because she does this song.
Japan.
Oh, that's too bad. But it's still the Pacific. By the way, if you haven't heard "Summertime New York," man, you got to hear it. They've been playing it on Sirius XM And every time I come on, I roll the windows down and like the birds fly south. It's amazing. It's like,
I do that when Timothy comes on. Yes.
Oh my God. But yeah, so anyway, I would check it out. But anyway, Yoko Ono is legally here. Just saying. I'm not implying that she's Chinese, because I've been corrected, and she's not here illegally, nor did she come through the Darien Gap. Although, you know, if we sent her to the Darien Gap, maybe she'd be a deterrent.
Well, she did sneak through she did sneak through to get to the Beatles recording session, so that's another
She may have come from a galaxy far, far away.
You know, you might blast that song when you're driving around the city. I like to blast the song Timothy when I'm driving around the city, which might be Barbecue's favorite song, but that's a different story for a different day too. But and a totally different issue, but not away from what we're discussing. Now with this huge influx of immigrants, we have another issue. It's going to be very difficult for the U.S. to take on any role to bring in people who are running from a situation like in Haiti or perhaps another country of unrest at the time. Where are you going to put people? There aren't many places. In fact, I'm understanding that President Biden was floating the idea of bringing Haitian asylum seekers or refugees, if you will, into Gitmo, Guantanamo Bay. What's going on here?
Haitians are great people. We love them. They're one of the very few classes of people in the world who are totally inept at running their own country. But when they come here, they become very nice.
Well, the point I'm trying to make here is we are in a situation now with a huge influx of immigrants, the poor vetting process and the high population of illegal immigrants, where the president just let them in. Now we cannot take, let's say, refugees from other nations, or not very many of them, because there's nowhere to put them. That's another issue.
Well, let me hit this real quick, because some nations are very picky about who they take. Now, the one example I know directly, which another country, which is almost as good as the British, is the New Zealanders, the Kiwi.
Yes.
And I've been in combat with the Kiwi. I was deployed to Auckland, to New Zealand, to be attached to their Special Air Service. I love the Kiwi, I do. And I make fun of them, but I love them. And if you want to become a New Zealander, if you want to immigrate to New Zealand, you have to have three things. First, money. Imagine that. You can't come in and just jump on the public droll. You got to, like, hey, you need to have like $100,000, dude. You know, show us the money. Show me the money. That's first. Secondly, money is not the only factor. Do you have a skill or professional background that is something that would add to the richness of New Zealand life? Now, is that racist? Is that? I mean, I'm serious now. Is that somehow?
Canada is like that.
Oh, you're making people like have a skill or capability before we let them in. And then, oh, by the way, the third element, you can't be a criminal. You can't like have been, in a prison for your life. So are those three requirements racist? Are those three requirements somehow unreasonable? And by the way, New Zealand's going way left last time I checked. So I'm just asking. I don't know,
Again, their infrastructure can't really handle a huge influx like we. Our infrastructure can't handle that influence, right? But I guess what I'm saying is, America, a large left bureaucracy like that in America would just say, well, they're a small country, they can't handle it. We're big enough, we can open our arms to everybody. But they're not thinking. No, people don't think ahead. And what's happening now is cities like New York are putting people in camps or small areas, trying to stuff them in schools. They have nowhere to put them, and it's the American taxpayer or the city taxpayer that's taking the brunt.
Just today, they announced in Greenville, just about an hour and a quarter away from me, that they're shutting down a special needs school, removing all the kids, North Carolina kids, from the school for purposes of turning it into a illegal kids refugee center. How is that? How is that in anybody's interest? Right. And oh, by the way, we have a Democrat governor. He's going after and removing the most needy kids from special needs. I mean, what is this?
How about this, though? And closer to me in New York City, and many people may have heard this already, but Mayor Eric Adams decided, instead of solving the migrant crisis or trying to say, well, we can't be a sanctuary city anymore, which is pretty much simple. He can do that. He had to cut the budget across the board for services. And so more people, less services. This is going to be a big mess. The NYPD's force is now, according to sources, reduced to about 29,000 police officers. And that's by the end of, it's going to be reduced to that, I should say, excuse me. It's going to be reduced to that by the end of 2025, which is a mid-1990s level.
Yep. Can I just jump in quickly as well and say that Maggie Thatcher came to power in the late 1970s in England because there was an immigration crisis going on then. And Maggie's thing was to enforce all the existing rules to turn illegal immigrants back. And then she literally made a campaign slogan out of "Britain is full.
Okay.
Can't afford any more immigrants."
Yeah.
And that's fair. And at this point, we're in a situation where we just can't let anybody in, yet they're being allowed to sneak in. We know this is now. First off, I'm for legal immigration. I know a lot of us are too, because
Yep.
I don't want to use that whole, oh, this nation was built on immigration and immigrants. Okay, yes, in a way it was. We brought in lots of good people to help America thrive.
Illegal immigrants didn't make the country.
Right. I'm saying legal immigrants. Help build the country. We get that. Yep. We understand that. But the idea seems to be to create a ghost population. The left like this idea. And when I say ghost population, I mean one which will kind of tip the census scales and falsely overrepresent blue urban areas in Congress at the expense of the rest of us across the nation. I'm not talking the great replacement theory. I'm talking about bringing in the ghost population theory.
Yep. That's how a lot of people in places like San Francisco or the suburbs of San Francisco rely on those people to get their lawns mowed and their gardens dug.
Well, now they're relying on them for a false population count. This was foreseen. Excuse me. I'm sounding like Joe Biden with these words here. This was foreseen by former Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross. Wilbur Ross tried to float the idea where we should not count illegal aliens in the census. And that should have happened. The Democrats was furious about it.
Wilbur Ross lost to Wilbur Mills.
Can I strongly suggest we stop calling them illegal aliens and call them what they are, criminal immigrants?
Yeah.
I don't think the Genesis song would have had that nice of a ring to it, though.
Bill Collins does a great Mexican in that video, by the way.
Yes, he did.
It's instructive too to go back and look at the numbers. People start moaning about the fact that the U.S. isn't taking enough immigrants or whatever. The United States, far and away, leads the world in just looking at the legal numbers in immigration. It's not even remotely close. I think we're right at 50% of all immigrants in the world wind up, who move to another country and stay there. We're half the planet. Half of those legal immigrants to someplace else wind up in the United States. And it's fun to look at some of the other countries. How many legal immigrants show up in China each year?
No,
last year I believe was 715.
I think you'd have to want to go to live under the Chinese Communist Party to be an immigrant there anyway.
Right.
That explains the number 715 more than their loss.
North Korea go to China.
That's fair.
But by the way, real quick, is Phil Collins going to get canceled now because he did that song about illegal aliens?
I think he hides that. I don't think he talks about it that much. But it was a great song. Interestingly, if you listen to the song, perhaps that would describe the plight of the illegal alien a lot better than people want to believe. The man comes in, he's thinking he's going to pull the American dream. Instead of coming in legally, he sneaks in, thinking it's going to be easier, which is much more difficult for them because he can't really do certain things. He can't really drive a car legally. He can't really get a job legally. It's very tough on him, and he wants to go back. that is the plight of illegal aliens. And the idea is if we have a better immigration system, or one where, hey, stay in Mexico, that was a good idea. Stay in line before you come in. That is a vetting process. That's
Right.
Hey, you don't leave Walmart when you buy something and you wait for the cashier to come to your house and collect the money. You're going to pretend you don't have it
I
anyway.
do.
Oh, okay. Well, that's you. But the point is, it's the same thing.
But you make a great point, Chris, and that is that there needs to be a pointed confrontation between Washington and Mexico City that says, guys, we're not taking people across the border just because they're standing on your side of the border.
Yeah.
But wasn't there?
Except
wasn't
that
there
we
when
are.
Trump was president? Right.
But,
Trump
yeah,
had
but
this.
that's
Right,
part of the
this-
problem with the wall. There are gaps in the wall, but even where there aren't gaps, our current border protection people are being told, if there's a crowd by a gate in the fence, open the gate and let them in.
Right.
That's
I mean,
insane.
we need to be very, very simple, but if you will, doctrinaire here, and that is no one steps across the border until they're given the high sign, and if the Mexican government doesn't like that, well, that's their problem. Our problem starts on our side of the border, not on your side of the border.
And that's fair. And believe me, if Mexico abides by this, they're going to make sure they deal with their border situation properly too, because people outside of Mexico have to sneak in through their borders to wait in line.
And we saw them doing that in 2018.
Right.
We saw them doing that when Trump put pressure on them. They actually closed their southern border, the Mexican southern border.
Yeah.
As opposed to when the current administration came into office, they lined up convoys of buses in Guatemala, and they were given essentially an escort to the northern border of Mexico. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Well,
All
this is the brilliant approach of South America of how to increase per capita income. They just remove capitalists.
All this can be attributed to TDS. When Joe Biden took office, he just decided to dismantle a lot of Trump's laws, Trump's executive orders, and of course Trump's policies. He did that, and this is one of the we've already seen the fruits of a lot of Biden's undoing of good policy. Yeah. This is another one. It's out of spite, and check this out. It would seem the far left wing of the Democrat Party wanted this to happen originally. But what about those former moderates? What about even Chucky Schumer, who at one time used to say, well, we need a closed border because it's important to have borders. He doesn't say that anymore. He's an open borders guy now. They all fell in line.
Most people don't realize that John F. Kennedy, the great hero of the left, nowadays would be classed as a rabid conservative compared to the Democrat Party of today.
Well, now forget about nowadays. While Ted Kennedy was still alive, we were running ads like that, and he was all angry.
Right. Well, I mean, Bill Clinton, as president, made several very strict statements about controlling the border.
Yep.
Statements.
Well, it's hard. It takes a huge hit on the economy and the American taxpayer, and this is what the politicians of the past knew. At least at that time. Right now, it's almost like the people who are. If the politicians of the past, and this is Biden included, the politicians of the past, Biden, Schumer, et al., Pelosi included, knew this was going to happen, then I'm going to submit to all of you, and I want to know what you think of this. I want to submit to you that they're doing this, they're allowing this influx to purposely destroy the country and bankrupt the American taxpayer.
Joe Biden that would require thought. And sorry, but Biden, whoever's pulling Biden's strings might work like that.
Correct.
But Biden himself, not a chance. He's not thinking. He's been on the wrong side of every. He's been on the wrong side of every policy for the last 55 years.
And he's proud of it.
Yep.
Yeah, right. I would agree with that. I think some of the folks you mentioned haven't really thought it through. This is a near-term political event for them. The long-term consequences issue is something they've never been good at in any regard. But there are folks, who look at the Great Reset, et cetera, who view the necessity of breaking down legal order in the Western world, in the United States and in Western Europe, et cetera, as a necessary preliminary step. And one of the ways you do that is you flow immigrants, particularly virulently non-Western immigrants, into their country.
But you know what? It's all climate change. That's why they're doing it. It's because of climate change, and you're a racist for thinking otherwise.
Right. Pete, I don't know if you've been outside today, but I can tell that the sun is about, 3 or 4 degrees hotter just because you denied climate change today. So shame on you.
It's at least 3 or 4 degrees warmer.
Shame on you for denying the existence of climate.
I blame it all on the carbon dioxide projected by the Houses of Congress.
Yeah, that's just your racism because you prefer white smoke to black smoke.
I just wouldn't want to be around. I wouldn't want to be around the Senate.
On many things.
I wouldn't want to be around the Senate on pork and beans night when they actually have all the. Go ahead, Tim.
I'm definitely a sexist.
Okay, that's good.
We're gonna hang you
as I was trying to say, I think I would not want to be around the Senate or the House on pork and beans night and all the methane. Just saying.
Now, local leaders of sanctuary cities are either begging for more money or doubling down. Okay, you have Eric Adams, who's pleading with the other areas to take the illegals that are being busted and telling Texas not to bust them in there. Whereas the Chicago mayor is just blaming the whole situation on Donald Trump, doubling down that the policy is correct. Both cities are in serious financial trouble, and they have been before the situation. Now it's much worse for them. When are the taxpayers going to revolt? And we also saw, and I want to get into this too, social services that are badly needed by the urban poor and even the rural poor are being taken away from them and given to these illegal aliens, and that's not good either.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, look, I sit on social services here in the county I live in. Yeah, we see it. It's happening. We haven't been hit by it as much as other major metropolitan areas in North Carolina, but we see the state resources are being diverted.
Right. Any economist should tell you that a good capitalist system would still provide a safety net, because there's always going to be unemployment. There's always going to be people who are, let's say, having a little trouble at a certain time or another in their lives. And we need to use that system to offer that and build a solid safety net for them. On the other hand, if we bring other people to weigh down that safety net, it's going to snap. That is what's happening here.
Absolutely.
But that's what they want. They want it to snap, Chris. They want to create a crisis so they can solve it.
There's some fascinating things. I saw on the news the other day, one of those little, not really meant to be humorous, but humorous exposés. Humorous because it's sort of a dark humor. Going into a hotel, actually, in New York, that's being used to house immigrants, and the hotel is full. The hotel is packed full, and they walked in and said, "Hey, we got a guy here." They had a guy with them. They said, "This guy's homeless. He's an American citizen, a citizen in New York. He's homeless. Can he have a room?" And of course they were told you have to leave. And they did this in several hotels, and just this fascinating juxtaposition of the fates of the different people. We've got a hotel full of illegal immigrants who have rooms, and we have this fellow who's there legally and he can't get a room.
And the hotel people have been here for 5 minutes, while that guy's been here for 50 years.
That gets us to the next level here. While President Biden is trying to fool everybody and tell us that this Lankford bill is going to solve the immigration problem and address it, we already established that it does not. So let's say November hits. The transition team gets ready for January. Okay, yes, I'm making a bold prediction. Gentlemen, what are your thoughts about the first one or two things that the next administration, regardless of who gets in, needs to do to fix this border situation and reestablish a controlled immigration process?
Finish the wall, bring in more immigration judges to make up courts so that reinforce the customs and border protection people so there's a lot more of them, so that they can, and then set up the court system so that the CBP can take any encounters they have or any people they catch inside America who didn't come in legally, and get them processed by an immigration court as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I agree. I think the first thing he needs to do, assuming we have a non-democratic president in January, the first thing he does is he orders the border closed. He orders the Director of Homeland Security to double down on everything he's doing. Everything else stops, and Homeland Security focuses on closing that border.
Yep.
And I would talk with the border states. I would talk with all the states and the governors and say, can we use some of your National Guard? Can we reinforce the border until we've got this wall finished? And I would declare the border itself a national security emergency, so that he would free up certain assets, money, and finish the wall.
Yep.
Yeah.
And just order it done. We know we want the wall finished today. So we're not going to debate this. It's a national security emergency. We're going to just do it. And one of the things you can do if all else fails, if it's a security issue, you can order the Seabees, you can order the Army engineers in there to just do it, and they just put in a wall and sort it out later and close the border. The next thing you do is you need people on the border, and then you also need to turn to the federal courts and you say, okay, when you get your hands on someone who's here illegally, you deport them.
Yep.
You just deport them. We're not going to play Mother May I. We're not going to try and solve this thing through some kind of discussion of Aristotelian ethics. We're just going to deport them.
Yep. Can I just jump in with one more as well, which is that in 2021, fentanyl became the leading cause of death for U.S. adults aged 18 to 45. That's huge as well, and it's another reason to make the border secure, properly secure, not the way our current leader of DHS believes it's secure.
I would go way more extreme, and here's what I would do. The border states which are red, I would authorize them to take whatever means necessary to secure their territory. That's Texas, and I think that's it. The rest of them, we'd have to look at federal options regarding New Mexico. Arizona may play along, and California. And those states which won't play along, I would take the National Guard and activate them and use them as a military force to secure the border. Secondly, I would designate Mexico as essentially a nation that we have to do intelligence preparation of the battle space. I would do what I suggested back in the 90s, to actually do a detailed study, and I would direct DOD to do it, not CIA, to assess the centers of gravity for commerce, for culture, and for political issues relating to gangs and the mafias. And I would then designate the mafias as terrorist organizations, giving us authority to use Title 10 and Title 50 things out down there. And I would consider and I would approve lethal operations as an option for the military as we find centers of gravity. And that would go over very badly, but I think it would wake people up. Even if we don't do a single op, it would wake people up. And then the next thing I would do is then create, this is going to sound very difficult, I would create within each state having a large set of illegal aliens, areas that will be designated as holding areas where, right now we're paying them all this money. It's expensive. I would work with localities to start figuring out who they are and simply say, we're going to put you in FEMA trailers. FEMA is wonderful. Let's have FEMA do its job and start bringing trailers up and put them in trailers. I'm not saying we should make them live miserably. I'm saying we should control where they live since they're not here legally, and start doing what we would do with any other group that's here that without being invited. And then they would be processed rapidly. And I mean within less than 30 days. You bring them to a camp for processing. You get them through, you get them documented because they're undocumented, right? We're just trying to make them documented, right? And then you put them in planes back rapidly. And that's where I would bring in the military again to actually try to figure out effective air bridges to move them back to wherever they came from. And those are the things I would do as a matter of policy. You all mentioned the wall already. Yeah, that would go without saying. Fully complete the wall rapidly and be done with it. So, and I would do that in the first year. I wouldn't mess around. I would make the courts stop me. I would just start doing it and let them, and it's going to be court battles, but do it so fast that by the time it gets to some major court, 90%'s done. So.
And again, just to put things into perspective, there are going to be casualties on the border because of it. There are going to be casualties around the border because of it. But there are 100,000 Americans a year dying of fentanyl overdoses. Which do we want? Americans dying or non-Americans?
Yeah.
Criminal aliens.
Well, by the way, right now CODIS is set up that you can only enter the names of convicted criminals. But because aliens do not have constitutional rights until they actually become citizens, I think that all alien fingerprints in process should be entered into CODIS.
Yep.
That way we can catch them much faster if they do crimes. And get rid of them.
Good point, Jay.
That's a point you bring up that's very important. When people, even in the mainstream media, these people are supposed to know things. They don't. They constantly try to portray the illegals that come in here as pseudo citizens, if you will, with the same rights as granted by the Constitution. Constitution, our laws grant privileges and rights to American citizens. And that's another thing. That's another floodgate we could open, but I do have to wrap this one up. We're going to have to continue this at another time. But I want to thank all of you who are watching for your time and for being with us here. I want to thank you, gentlemen, for doing this as well. We are Project Sentinel. Follow us on X at PRJ_Sentinel. We couldn't put the whole Project Sentinel thing for a couple of reasons. A lot of letters. That's how they do it. But it's at PRJ_Sentinel. We're also on Facebook. We have the full name there and other social media. Find us. You can Google us. And if you're watching on one of our video or listening to us on one of our audio podcast outlets, please hit the subscribe button. And you can also find us on our website, projectsentinel.com. That's projectsentinel.com. Once again, thank you for being with us and stay informed.
And if you're Canada, be sure and watch, and we love you anyway.